speak to you in the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. Amen. I want to start off this morning by saying a very sincere thank you to all of you and to Martha for inviting me to be here. When I first came here as the interim priest, coming up on 4 years this Easter, I never thought I would be back here for this auspicious occasion as you begin to celebrate 225 years in St. Catherine's. But I'm very grateful that I am, and I'm very grateful to Martha for inviting me to come back and be here amongst you. I recall that first Sunday when I came back, as I say, almost 4 years ago now, and to begin as your interim priest. And I remember the atmosphere in the church for those first few weeks that I was here. There was a kind of mixture of anxiety and certainly a lot of grief because Rob, your beloved Rob, had left, and you were all going to miss him a lot, and Veronica too, as I recall. And there was that palpable anxiety that went on for a while, and I used to hear snippets of conversations like, you know, we are an aging congregation, we better get it right this time. We'll never find another Rob. If we don't get a good leader this time, it's all over. How long will this process take? And then as time went on, do you think we could really consider a woman as rector of St. George's? And of course, Val and I were up here doing our stuff, and it was the first time, I think, in the life of St. George's 225 years that you'd had 2 women up front all the time. It was kind of fun. So that's what happened. And many of you will remember those sort of anxious days that slowly the anxiety began to diminish, and we got down to work, and you put together a profile, and the parochial committee went out and listened to people and watched people and interviewed people, and wonders of wonders, Martha came along. And everybody breathed a sigh of relief, and we're all so happy that she's here. And then Scott came along to kind of gild the lily, and Scott's upstairs videotaping today, so I get to sit in his spot. But between the two of them, we are so very blessed in this congregation. We all know that. But let's not forget that there is still anxiety out there. There's anxiety right across the whole Western Church. The established churches throughout Europe, throughout Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and all over the place. We're all struggling because what used to work doesn't work anymore. The world has changed around us, and we have woken up finally to that fact and are trying to do something about it, which means that our leaders are leading us in risky times. Now, fortunately, Martha doesn't mind being in risky times. In fact, I think she kind of relishes it. But she's unusual. Most clergy today are less than comfortable in these times. Perhaps that's a very good thing, because it means they're on their toes all the time. But the world that most of us remember in Churchland, and the world that we are celebrating, those 225 years, that world has gone. And now we are working together in different ways. And one of the blessings for me this morning was that we had those 3 readings that we just heard, and each of them feeds into that whole theme very nicely, because they all talk about a God who isn't looking for the kinds of things that human beings are looking for when it comes to acclamation. So Micah, the prophet, tells us, what does God require of you? Does God require burnt offerings? Does God require sacrifices of the nature that you've always been taught that you have to make? No, what God requires of you is to do justice and to love kindness or mercy and to walk humbly before your God. Humility is not something I would have said was very very deeply entrenched in the Western Church for the last 200 years, or for the last 1,000 years for that matter. But humility is something that we're learning now as we become more vulnerable. And then in the second reading, Paul's letter to the Corinthians, that troublesome church that gave him all those letters and all that trouble, Paul writes to the Corinthians and he says, Jews demand signs, Greeks demand wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified. We preach a God who is looking for fragility and vulnerability and who is modeling that for us. Humility again. Our king doesn't ride a steed. Our king doesn't wear a diamond-encrusted crown. Our king enters Jerusalem on a donkey and wears a crown of thorns. Nothing that human beings would have thought were worth caring about, and yet suddenly that's what we as Christians are supposed to be celebrating. And then we have the Beatitudes. We all know them so well, we almost forget how inhuman they are, how anti-human they are. The human values that we espouse are turned upside down. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who are depressed, those who are struggling, those who are not quite sure where to turn next. They're blessed. We're blessed. And we are blessed here in this congregation in so many ways. And that's where I want to go now. Because once we recognize that we can't do it the way we always did, and that we can't always be the church that has it all, then we become open to talking to other people. And that's what's happened in that conversation that's been going on in St. Catherine's for the last 2 or 3 years. Nobody can say that they're safe anymore. I remember Bishop Walter telling us that. We all are vulnerable in many ways, and so the more that we can admit that and sit together and talk together about it and discover that we all have so many talents that we can share, suddenly the world becomes a different place. And so as we celebrate 225 years of settled ministry in this building, and we have lots to celebrate, we also celebrate that for the next 200 years, we may very well be doing things differently, because we may be open to allowing other people to help us find the way that we need to go, and we can work together in that direction that God is calling us into. I remember when I was first ordained, this is 28 years ago now, going to a clericus meeting. Clericus is a kind of a gathering where all the Anglican clergy get together, and they were all men in those days. And I remember going to a meeting just after Easter, and they were all talking about how many people they'd had in the pews over the Easter season and how much money they brought in. It was a very competitive meeting, and I'm sure most of those numbers were embroidered for the gathering. I'm thinking, do I really want to be part of a church that does this? Is this really what I'm being called to do as a priest? But I think that that's what we've done over the years. We've competed with the parishes around us rather than seeing ourselves as all being in the same boat. And now we really are all in the same boat. And we have to work together, and we have to open our hearts and our minds to maybe seeing that God is asking us to look outward rather than inward, and that the boat's becoming a little more open to the air. And so as we both celebrate 225 years of wonderful history, we also can celebrate today, I think, that the light is shining in from outside in a way that it never has, and that we are going to be working together for the next 200 years with other ways of being church. And I say, thanks be to God for that reality. Amen.